We are at the workplace of Dan MacArthur on MacArthur Road in Marlboro. My name is Roxanne Burke. Today's production crew is on video camera, Ben Connor, on audio recorder, Ben Kowalski, on still camera, Ben Kowalski. Yeah, audio is working, right? I'd like to resume our interview by returning to your work as a builder. Then we can talk about your work as an instrument maker, a musician, and a farmer. How many full-time employees does MacArthur Construction currently have, and what are their names?
We have one full-time employee, Benji Cragen. We have 3 part-time employees. My son Jason MacArthur works 4 days a week. Dennis Driscoll works 4 days a week. And my wife Gail is a part-time employee of the business as well, doing however much time it takes to take care of the paperwork and the payroll. So I have 4 employees.
Do you have any part-time workers?
Yeah, well, I have those 3. Yes, got it.
Who are some of the subcontractors you use, and what are their specialties?
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think if any of them are from Marlboro. For plumbers, we use a lot of different plumbers from around here. Brooks Mitchell lives in Marlboro. His kids have gone to the elementary school. We work with Brooks sometimes. Same thing with electricians. Right now there aren't any electricians living in Marlboro, but we have worked with Marlboro electricians in the past. Roofers, same thing. Most of the subs we work with live in Brattleboro, I think. But roofers, tilers, electricians, plumbers, concrete guys. Well, Johnny Galanis lives in Marlboro. Galanis Concrete. He's one of our concrete contractors for pouring foundations and things.
Would you talk about the current and upcoming building projects that MacArthur Construction is involved with?
We are right now doing a renovation to an arts and crafts building in Brattleboro that was built in the early part of the 20th century, and we're putting a living addition on one end and a garage on the other end, but we're doing it in the same style that the original house was built, arts and crafts style. So, for instance, where a roof overhang hangs off the building, arts and crafts had these little kind of doodads that held the roof up, and we are building some of those so that the style will be similar to the original building. That's one of the big projects we're in right now. We're doing a garage for a neighbor, etc. A lot of different things. Too many to mention, actually.
What are some of the personal skills a builder needs to have?
That's actually a good segue from our last interview, because I was just saying at the end of our last interview that I thought that the thing that I've learned the most about is trying to visualize the whole project. So not only what has to happen this minute, but what has to happen in the next hour, what has to happen in the next day, what has to happen in the next 2 weeks. So just kind of visualizing the whole project and the sequence at which each of the things will get done. That's a skill that I've learned. I've gotten better at it over the years.
Would you please describe a typical day of work with MacArthur Construction from when you get up in the morning until you go to bed at night?
We start work at 7 o'clock. We always have. I like to start at 7 because then an 8-hour day is done at 3:30 in the afternoon, and that allows the employees to have an afternoon to do their own projects, do other things. So we start at 7 o'clock, which means everybody's up early, kind of out of the house by 6:30, getting ready to work at 7. We get to work. We usually have a coffee break at 10 in the morning, and then we have lunch around noon whenever things sort of wind to a stop, and then at 3:30 we wind up and put tools away and start in again the next day. So that's kind of the typical day.
Has the overall process of designing and building homes changed for you during the course of your career? If so, in what ways has it changed?
Yes, it has changed. It's gotten more, we used to be able to build buildings, the owners would be able to get a bank loan, a bank mortgage through a local bank, and we could kind of design the home on the back of an envelope, go to the bank, they'd loan the owners the money, we'd build the house, and everything would work out fairly simply. Mortgages are much harder to get now than they used to be, so it's a much more complicated process and a lot more estimating and submitting for payments and things like that. So that's one of the big changes. But we mostly deal with people who want to build their own homes or their own garages or whatever. We design them and build them, and that part hasn't changed all that much.
In your opinion, what are some of the difficulties that small construction companies and builders face today?
I think permitting is getting a little trickier than it used to be, although it's still amazingly easy to me. I hear people complaining about permits all the time, but for us it hasn't been a major issue. Permits, codes, you have to just be a little more careful to comply with codes than you used to, and that's a good thing. I don't know that really. Still about the same. You get up, you go to work, and you get paid for it. So I don't think it's changed a whole bunch along those lines.
What do you imagine the future of MacArthur construction will be?
That's also tricky to know. My son works for MacArthur Construction now as an employee, but he has his own business, and we'll show you that later. He's an apple grower and a hard cider maker, and that's the business that he wants to be the owner of and to be his career. So I don't know. Maybe we work for a few more years and then Gail and I retire and MacArthur's construction ceases to be and goes on to other things. So I don't know that really. Can't answer that question.
Okay. We're in your instrument building shop now.
Let's say we are. How about that?
Yep.
Now we are.
What types of instruments have you made?
Well, I am a guitar player, so I have built mostly guitars. I've built a mandolin, but mostly guitars, 6-string guitars, 12-string guitars, and I've built a bunch of these big bass guitars. They're strung like a regular bass, but they're acoustic instead of electric. So they're not as loud as a... They're not as loud as an electric bass. You could put an amplifier on it, but they're okay for using for sitting around in small groups. You can actually play it, and if you're playing with someone who's playing a banjo or a fiddle quietly, it's a nice thing. It's kind of a, I don't know, I just have fun building. And it's an alternative to an electric bass. But mostly I have built acoustic 6-string guitars. And I build steel string guitars. And I use only woods that could be cut in the forests around here. So this spruce came from here somewhere, I don't know exactly where, because we cut spruce down, we store it away, and then we get to use it. The cherry came from around here. The curly maple for the sides came from around here. The butternut came from down on Ames Hill Road, the curly maple for the middle of the neck. So, and the hop hornbeam ironwood came from around here as well. So that's wood that we have in these woods that most closely duplicates what the best acoustic steel string guitars are made out of. But I think it makes a guitar as good as any wood in the world. So anyway, sorry to interrupt you, Roxanne. Go ahead with your questions.
When did you begin building instruments? What was the first one you built? Do you still have it? I
still do have, yes. I built a guitar in 1967, and I still have it. It's not much of a guitar, but I learned a lot doing it. And then I didn't build any more until the 70s. I built a few in the 70s, and then I mostly started again in the 1990s, building a few more. And I built about maybe 10, 12 more guitars in the 1990s, early 2000s. But I don't do it too much anymore. I have so many other things to do. It's been fun, it's been very gratifying, but was kind of a phase of my life, you might say.
What led you to want to make guitars?
I was a high school kid, and I didn't actually own a guitar, so I wanted to build one. And so I played my first guitar for a number of years, and have in general played guitars that I've built over the course of my life. So mostly it was, to begin with just wanting one, and then after that wanting to be able to say that if I was playing a guitar, it was a guitar that I had made, not one that I had bought, because I have some sort of a sentimental attachment to being able to do things for myself.
Do you prefer guitars that you make or guitars that you buy?
I prefer playing ones that I've made because of that, just because of the sentimental attachment. I can't tell you honestly that they're better guitars. There are things that other professional full-time guitar makers can do better than I can do, and I acknowledge that. But it's not worth having one of those guitars from my perspective. I'll stick with the ones I made.
Do you play only on guitars you've made, or do you also use instruments you purchased?
I'll play anything. Yeah, I'll play anything. You know, if you're out and about and you want to play a song and you don't have one of your guitars, you play somebody else's for sure. Yeah, no, I'm not particular about it. But most of the instruments I own are instruments I've made myself.
How did you learn? Did you study with someone? Would you explain a bit about your evolution as a guitar maker?
There was a book, early on, a book by Irving Sloan, How to Build a Classical Guitar. It must have been published in the 1950s, maybe 1960s sometime. So I were doing other things. Yes, so I did sell them for a while. I made them available and people bought them and played them, but like I said, it was just a phase of my life that is now behind me. So it may come again, who knows?
What would you say are some of the characteristics of your instruments, both visually and in terms of sound?
Well, the visual part, I think, is just really embracing local woods as much as possible. I mean, we have wood here that grows in our woods. These trees right here are as beautiful as anything anywhere in the world, and kind of as intriguing as anything anywhere in the world, visually speaking. And red spruce was the wood that was used by Martin Guitar in the 30s to make the guitars that most steel string players feel are the epitome of steel string guitar sound. Red spruce grows here. We have that very same wood here. So I think visually we can compete with any wood anywhere, and I think personally, sound-wise, that you can improve upon red spruce and some combination of maple or cherry or walnut or any of the woods that we have here, depending on what it is you're trying to do with the guitar. Some woods give a sort of a punchier, twangier sound, and some give a sort of a mellower, deeper sound. We've got those woods here, so I think Vermont woods could be comparable to woods anywhere in terms of the sound of the instrument.
Are the woods you use an important part of your instruments?
Yes, very much so. Yeah, as I mentioned before, they have to be available to us here in our woods. Otherwise, I won't use them. So and I mean, it's maybe stupid, but it's a criteria that I have, and I'm sticking with it.
I don't think it's stupid.
Okay, good. Thank you for that.
Are you working on one at present?
I am, yes. I had an order for a guitar from a local friend, probably 10 years ago now, and I have started it, and the pieces are cut. He's a very patient man. Every once in a while I work on it a little bit more. Whether it will ever get finished or not, I don't know, but the answer is yes, sort of. Working on one now, sort of.
It's like books that
you
lost and then found them again.
Yeah, it's under that pile, right? I'll dig it out and read it.
I'd like to ask you a few questions about your life as a musician. You come from a family of musicians. When did you realize that you also wanted to be a musician?
As a young person, it's mostly my mom who, when we first moved here, it was really very rural compared to the way it is now. And there are very few people living around here, especially in the wintertime. So she started asking around, trying to find old timers who might remember some of the old songs and stories. And you know, she dragged her kids around with her because she couldn't just leave them all at home during that time. So sometime, you know, before I was 10, 12 years old, I was, you know, occasionally playing along and picking up her guitar and playing it. So around in there somewhere, I would say, probably. For me, though, and this may cover some of your questions, I was never a professional musician. You know, my mom was. Other members of my family have been from time to time, but for me, it's always been a sideline. I'm a carpenter, we love to farm here, and the music could fit in with that, or not fit in with that. But it was all, for me, it wasn't, it's never a way that I looked at to earn a living or to earn money. It was more just, you know, it was fun to do, so.
Do you remember what kind of guitar your mom had?
Yes, oh, absolutely. It's a 0018G. Which means it was made in 1959. She bought it in Boston because it had a scratch on it for $100 plus $3 tax in about 1960, and she still has it. And a G, what a G denotes for anybody who's interested in this is that the 0018s with a G significant G letter after them are set up for nylon strings with a wider neck and a different method of attachment at the bridge. But she always used silk and steel strings on it, and it still plays beautifully. It's a very nice little guitar.
Who encouraged your early efforts in music?
Well, certainly my mom, and my dad was an instrument builder, so him building instruments was always an inspiration for me. Gib Taylor, a friend of the family's who taught at Marlboro College, always helping people figure out how to build instruments. Very influential for me as well.
When did you decide to concentrate on the guitar?
Oh, early on. I actually play a little bit of banjo, a little bit of mandolin, but just the tiniest little bit. So I don't know. It just before I really was thinking very rationally. I just started playing the guitar and I kind of never stopped.
What other instruments do you play either professionally or for fun?
Really, I gotta say, I play the banjo and the mandolin so little that it hardly even counts. So guitar. Pretty much guitar.
Who do you feel have been your most important music teachers?
I don't know. Pick up stuff from people all over the world. You know, I think, I guess I would say that from my mom I learned that it's the story that goes with the song that's the crucial thing. You know, it's not the sort of the peppy beat or the pop song arrangements, but what does the story tell you? And I definitely learned that from her. My dad also very much likes a song with a story to it. And then just knowing people over the years, people whose songs brought good stories and important messages, those people were all influential. Those are the things I like, basically.
At what point did you become a professional, meaning you were serious about your playing and you got paid?
Well, sort of never. We did do it. I would accompany my mom, but as I said before, I never was really a professional. I'm an amateur, and it was always secondary to my other interests.
Why did you want to become a professional musician in the first place? What was the attraction?
Well, I guess I'm going to have to bypass that question because I really never did. I really never was a professional musician.
Yeah.
You know, I went to lots and lots of gigs and I hung out with professional musicians plenty, but I never had the interest or the talent to do that.
Do you feel the same about it today as you did when you started?
Yeah, I do. I like music. I like it very much, but for me it's a personal thing, not a thing that I'm either capable of performing or have the ability to do. So for me, it's a personal thing. Music is a personal thing.
The MacArthur family is the group you're most known for playing with, but are there other bands or groups you've played with professionally?
We one time had again, I mean, sort of professional, I guess. We had a country band many years ago, Megan and the Blue Seal Boys, and we played around, played a few gigs. It was fun. We had a fun time doing it. Country, kind of sort of rock country, but again, you know, we basically weren't good enough to make a lot of money doing it, so we mostly had fun.
It's a funny name, Megan and the Seal Boys.
Blue Seal Boys. Yeah, there was when we bought grain around here, the company that sold grain around here used to be the Blue Seal, and so they were the grain company that if you wanted to, you know, if you had cows or chickens or whatever, that's what you got Blue Seal to feed your animals. So hence the name. Good country name, gritty country name.
How many CDs have you and the MacArthur family released?
Boy, I don't know. It must be 6 or 8, somewhere in that vicinity, I think. Yeah. Mostly my mom. You know, she's the driving force behind it.
Where does your material come from? Do you write your own songs or perform other composers' work or both?
I do about half and half. My own songs and songs I've learned from other people. On the MacArthur family CDs, most of it is traditional music, traditional songs and ballads, then with an intermix of other people's, and then like I say, I have written a number of songs, and some of those are recorded also.
Whose music, other than your own, do you like to perform? What is it about their work that inspires you?
You know, I said before, I like songs that tell stories. I have a friend who lives in Scotland, a wonderful songwriter, whose songs always have an intrigue to them. Dave Goulder is his name. I don't know, anybody whose songs tell stories. Gordon Bach, Dave Mallet, trying to think. Gordon Lightfoot, a wonderful Canadian singer-songwriter. Those people whose songs kind of take you somewhere. I like a lot of their music.
Do you have any plans for future recordings?
No. How's that for a simple answer?
Like the simplest answer you've given yet.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Was there ever a point in your career when you considered quitting?
Well, I sort of have now. So yes. Mm-hmm.
What caused you to continue? Was it someone who advised you or an experience you had?
Continue. Well, since I've quit, then your question is a little bit redundant there. Yeah.
Other than that period, what are some of the reasons why you have continued to work as a musician?
Okay, I'm going to have to pre-read these questions here. Yeah.
Didn't even think today, so.
Yeah. No, you see, now that I basically, you know, music is just something that I do just for myself and around the house, then, so I'm just really not doing it anymore, so.
In a typical year, how many performances might you have had?
Well, during the busiest time, probably 30 or 40, I would guess. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that was many years ago now.
Did you get nervous before a performance?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to get yourself prepared for a performance? What did you do?
Well, because I lack, you know, many of the necessary ingredients to be a good performer, I concentrated on trying to get the words to the songs as clear in my mind as I could. I have a friend who recently, his analogy was he has to ride herd on the words before he goes out and performs. It's like they're cattle, you know, and he's got them in his corral before he goes out to perform. But as he's walking out onto the stage, he can't let the corral break or the words will start to slip away. So just trying to make sure I had, you know, pretty good hold on the words. That was enough work for me.
Was that the same as getting ready to record?
No, not so much, because when you're recording, you can do it over if you forget the words, or you can even have the words in front of you. So it's kind of a different thing. You have to, when you're recording, you really want the performance to be as tight as you can get it. So a little bit different, actually. Different.
Where have been some of your favorite places to perform?
Well, the Marlboro Fair, always a favorite. Always fun. Just right here in Marlboro.
Okay. Are there any specific performances that stand out as having been important, either professionally or personally?
Yeah. I remember one time performing at a gig over in at the Troy Music Hall with Pete Seeger and Arlo Guthrie. That was a lot of fun during a time when there was a lot of sort of anti-government activity, and of course, you know, those guys, they were as much political as they were musical, you know, and they wanted to bring a message, which is, yeah, this is music, you should enjoy the music, but it's got a message, and our message is be active, you know, and speak up if you see things happening that you feel should not be happening. And so that was a great gig for me. That was a lot of fun.
What work have you done with your music, either as a composer or as a performer, that you are pleased with having accomplished?
You know, it's sometimes fun to have your songs, to hear other people play your songs. So that's always gratifying to me when somebody says, is it okay if I perform or record one of your songs? I have fun with that. It's fun. And only once this happened to me. I was sitting around a room full of people, and somebody sang a song that I had written, and they didn't know that I was there and had written the song. So that was lots of fun.
How do you see your future career in music develop?
Yeah, pretty much developed as far as it's going to go right now, I think.
I like your guitar.
Yeah, isn't that pretty nice wood, isn't it? Yeah, we're lucky to have this stuff here.
Now I'd like to switch to your farm and farm work. Ben, did you cycle around the land?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did a lot of outside pictures.
Yeah, and you can see there's a lot of things growing right outside here, so yeah, you might be able to...
I got a lot of pictures.
Yeah.
What is the name of your farm?
Whetstone Ledges Farm.
When did you realize that you were interested in farming and agriculture?
We have been living here since about 1970, and we knew when we moved here, my wife and I, Gail, when we moved here, I grew up here and was away just briefly for college. Not enough time to complete college, just a couple of years. And when we moved back, both of us left college and came back here, we knew then that we wanted to somehow make this land productive in one way or another. And we started growing things, and we just continue to put things in. It gets actually...
How would you describe your farm and your agricultural practices?
We are not certified organic because there's extra paperwork and expense that goes with that, but we don't do anything that would disallow us from becoming certified organic. So, and we support the organic movement. We just don't, you know, so far we haven't certified ourselves. But we should do that. In some ways I feel remiss for not doing it. But we're basically an organic farm using as much local materials as we can and as little brought in fertilizers as we can possibly get away with.
How have you learned about farming?
Sort of trial and error, although there are wonderful resources around here. Many years ago, Frank and Mary Hicken over in Dummerston, Reed Miller, the people at Green Mountain Orchards, they've been growing blueberries for, well, since the 30s anyway, at Green Mountain. Frank and Mary Hicken have been growing raspberries for many years before we started growing raspberries. So we could ask those people stuff. Vermont has a wonderful resource in the Vegetable and Berry Growers News, supported by the UVM and the extension agents. Vern Grubinger, who works for the state, but is basically his job is to figure out how people can make money farming. Those have been great resources for us, and we're lucky to have all of them here. The old timers, the new research centers, all of the above.
Would you please give me an overview of Whetstone Ledges Farm through its historical evolution? Like, when and why did it start, and what has prompted you expanded over the years?
So I don't remember when we came up with the name. Early on, though, when this was just a tiny operation, it used to be called Gale's Farm Stand. And so the earliest signs we have just say Gale's Farm Stand. And then at some point, but many years ago, probably 35 years ago, we decided to call it Whetstone Ledges. The Whetstone Brook flows right down here, between here and where our house is. And the reason it's called the Whetstone Brook is because there are ledges just down over the hill here, in which the stones fall out of the ledges into the stream in these perfectly flat shapes. And the lore has it that the early settlers used to come hiking up the Whetstone to get these to sharpen their scythes and their axes, because it was the earliest thing they could find that would do a good job of sharpening their tools. So that's why this is called the Whetstone Brook, and that's why we named it Whetstone Ledges Farm.
Excuse me for a second.
Yeah, do you want to put that
Yeah, we're gonna try to
foam
find
thing over it?
something to like.
I thought you
block out
had
the
a
window.
foam thing over it, right?
No, this thing over it was supposed to work, but the wind is making it just too muffly.
Yeah.
And we usually do not do recordings outside.
Yeah, it's like
So I think we put like a
kind of
box.
blocks over
Oh,
your
yeah.
voices.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah.
That sounded good.
Yeah.
How about we try putting it down here for one thing? There might be less wind down here.
I'll block out the window here.
You'll block it a little better. How's that sound?
It's good.
Real good?
There you go.
And then maybe this sign can just be sort of as a protector for it too.
There we go. That's better.
See, make sure you can hear Roxanne okay.
Yeah.
Where are the blueberries going to be?
So that's a good question. Then make that your next question. How about that?
When are the blueberries going to be out?
Blueberries are actually, the flowers are just coming out now, so they will probably be 2 months from now before there are really lots of blueberries, mid-July sometime.
What people or ideas or experiences would you say have influenced your thoughts about farming and specifically your farm?
Oh, so much of the ideology,
Yeah, good.
is it okay?
Yeah.
Of the 60s and 70s was influential. You know, there used to be a magazine that was called, what was it called, Organic Farming or something like that, where people were, you know, basically, they're just doing what everybody did 200 years ago, but just not using chemical fertilizers, not using any herbicides or pesticides, trying to be as gentle on the land as possible and to improve the land as much as possible. So our goal has been all along to try to leave this land in better productivity than it was when we started farming here. That's our goal.
Sorry. What are some of the more important skills one has to have in order to have a farming career?
You know, you should have Gail here for this because she has those skills. She's the one with the green thumb. She knows when plants are beginning to get attacked by diseases, and she knows what to do about that. She knows when the soil temperature is right for planting all the various different things. She knows when a plant looks like it's not getting the nutrients that it needs, and she figures out what it's likely to need to improve the methods of growing. So, you know, those are some of the ones. You also have to have, you know, there's money involved, so you have to have you have to calculate whether you made money or lost money last year, and if you lost money, you got to figure out what to do differently. You know, we use a fair amount of machinery, so you need to keep your machinery in good shape. We also are sugar makers, so you need to, you know how to gather sap and boil sap and can it and sell it, etc. So those are some of the things we've learned over the years.
Do you have any employees to help with your work?
Yes, we are beginning to now. So mostly Gail and myself, and there are 2 people who come. They were actually here this morning. One of them is a paid employee, comes and works on the farm, and the other one is a local woman who trades every year for fresh berries. So she comes and works in the spring, early summer, and she has a credit here, and then when the berries are ripe in the summertime, she can come and pick all she wants, and she doesn't have to think about the money. So I hope it works out well for her, because it works out really well for us.
What animals or crops have you raised in the past, and what do you raise now?
Animals, we used to have cows. We milked cows for a while just for our own use. We had pigs for many years. When our kids were young, we always had pigs. And then we've had pigs each of the last, is it 2 or 3 years, with some of the local families, you know, Troy and Annie's family, Wick and Juno, and Robin, Ava, and Milo all help, and we work together to raise pigs last couple of years. Chickens, we actually have chickens that we have grow for eggs, and we just got 35 more today, so that they just went into the chicken coop, so we'll start producing eggs pretty soon. But it's mostly vegetables and berries, so or syrup, let's say. So syrup crop is one of the biggest ones. Raspberries and blueberries probably comparably big in terms of the amount of numbers of berries that we sell. And then we also grow a complete line of vegetables, everything from, you know, from radishes, asparagus, all the way to pumpkins in the fall.
Which of your crops do you consider specialties? Like that not many other growers produce, or that you just like to grow?
I think that the raspberries is probably the one that has the biggest draw here for us. We like growing them. They're not easy to grow, especially organically, so there's a lot of handwork involved. We don't mind doing that, and obviously people don't mind paying for it when they come, because I think it's a bit of a specialty, especially the fact that we have it available for pick your own. People come from a long ways away to pick their own raspberries. So I think it's probably our most special crop that we have.
You also like maple syrup in season, so I'd like to ask you a few questions about that. Would you please tell us a bit about the history of your sugar house? When was it built, by whom, what modifications have been made over the years?
So we built that sugar house actually as a shop. I was going to use it as a woodworking shop in 1973, and then by 1983 we had built a new shop where we interviewed the other day. The first interview was in the newer shop, so we had the other building sitting there. So in 1983 we cleaned all of the other junk out of it and moved our first evaporator in there, and it's been our sugar house since, and where we've been boiling our own sap since 1983. And then 2010, we raised the floor up so the evaporator would be at a better height, and bought a new back pan. So there have been steady set of improvements, but it's been mostly unchanged since 1983. Roscoe. Oh, there's Milo. Okay, good.
What's an evaporator?
Oh, the evaporator. So you've been in our sugar house, Roxanne, haven't you? I think you guys have been in there, haven't you?
There?
Yeah, our
Yeah.
sugar house.
I think so.
The evaporator's the big long pan that you boil on.
Oh.
And it's ours is 4 feet wide and 14 feet long. It's full of sap, and you just light a big fire underneath it, and then you boil, boil, boil.
Okay. What are the tasks that have to be done in order to be ready to boil as the sugaring season begins and the sap is running?
The biggest one that maybe takes the most time for us, is getting all the tubing ready in the woods. We have, I don't know how many miles of tubing in the woods, and it all stays in the woods, but it all gets knocked down when a tree falls down, or when the winds blow it can get pulled over. So in the fall and early winter we have to go through all the lines, make sure they're all in good condition, run straight, that nothing's laying down or broken, so that as soon as it's ready in the spring and the weather starts getting right, we can just tap the trees, gather the sap, and boil it. So that's probably the biggest prep that we have, getting tubing ready.
In Marlboro and at your sugar house, what are the usual rough dates for the beginning and ending of boil?
Probably average February 24th to March, to the 1st of April. That's probably average begin to end. It's gotten earlier by about a week since we started 30-some years ago. So we know that now. Be ready early, because you know, the average is earlier than it has been in the past. syrup is good, isn't it? It's a good thing. It's such a good thing.
Has that changed, or is it still pretty much the same as when you first began sugaring?
It has changed. Yeah.
Are there differences in your sugaring operation compared to other makers?
You know, we have, most of our friends who are sugar makers have an operation similar to ours, which is to say they gather the sap, they boil it over an open pan, they don't use a reverse osmosis machine, and they don't use lots of vacuum in the trees, and they still fire it with wood fired. So those are what we consider to be basically traditional ways of making syrup. The big operators who make us all look absolutely minuscule, all use reverse osmosis, they all use vacuum, high vacuum, and they all boil with oil, or many of them do. So, you know, they make way more syrup than all of us put together, but there are a lot more of us, and we think we make better syrup than they do. And I'm sticking to that, sticking with that.
Can you give a rough idea of how much you produce on average during a typical season?
We make about 225 gallons a year of syrup.
That's a lot. What are some of the factors that hold your interest in continuing to sugar?
I love the sugaring community. Everybody who sugars is somebody that I would like to consider a friend of mine. They are all hardworking, and they all make the best product they can, and they all would help each other out. You know, you've heard stories of somebody's sugar house burns down in the middle of the season, and everybody's there the next day to help them get up and making syrup again. So just a good community. It's a great community, and it's also, I love to have people stop in the sugar house and ask questions who have never seen it before, because, you know, this is the only place in the world where sugar maples grow. And so one of the few places where you can actually drive along a dirt road, see steam coming out of sugar house, stop in and get your questions directly answered. So that's fun too. That's very engaging.
Okay, big question. Since sugaring is one season-specific farm job, would you describe what the other main farming activities you have to do in each season through an entire year? Perhaps you could begin with sugaring.
So you boil the syrup, and at the end of the season, the trees stop running, you're done. You put up the last of the syrup, you wash your tubing lines out, clean up your evaporator, then you have to start cutting your firewood for next year's sugar season, because that takes about 15 cords for us. So I'm about halfway through that now, mid-May, but this is a couple months after we're done sugaring. So during the summer, I have to get the other half of my sugar wood ready and split and ready and put away so it's dry for next year. In the meantime, we have to start getting the fields ready, prune the bushes, raspberry and blueberry bushes, fertilize the raspberry and blueberry bushes, and start getting the fields ready to plant things. We already have in the garlic and the onions. It's a late year this year. Peas are in, radishes are in, some of the early crops. But if it stays dry like this, tomorrow we'll be trying to get some of our fields that have been muddy because it's been so wet. We'll get the manure on them and get them tilled and ready for planting. And then we'll be in the season when we're starting to pick things and fill this farm stand up with vegetables and fruits. So it's kind of an ongoing process. There's no real downtime. Maybe the fall for us is the best we have in terms of time off from the farm.
Do you sell all your produce through the Whetstone Ledges farm stand?
Yes, we do. Yeah, and we're big believers in retail because if we sell at wholesale, you know, we can sell everything we can grow right here at the farm stand.
Who is a typical buyer of your products? Are they local people or from far away?
For the maple syrup, they're local people. We put it up in jars. Some of you already know that, right? And so we sell more than half our syrup, I think, to locals just in their own jars, and that's a great way to do it. Hopefully, you know, we make plenty of money. Hopefully, the value is good for them. For the raspberries and the other vegetables, I would say the typical consumer is someone who's maybe a summer resident and who comes here for the summer, and they want to shop at little local farm stands, support locals. So maybe not quite so much local support for the berries and vegetables.
In your opinion, what are some of the difficulties that you and farms of your size face today?
Well, climate is always an issue. As I was saying before, the fields are still wet. What is the 17th of May, and the fields we haven't even been able to get in on yet. So we've got a long rainy season like we just had. That makes it difficult. Our corn will be later because we aren't able to get in on the fields. But, you know, climate's been the same problem for millennia now, so that's not really different. It's just a challenge. Energy, physical energy to do all the work, that's always an issue. But we seem to be managing with that, especially now that we have young people coming and helping on the farm. That's a good thing.
What do you feel are the more important parts of your farm work?
Of mine, more important are keeping the machines in good shape, making sure that they're ready. Like I said before, Gail's really the one with the green thumb, so she knows what things need in order to be able to grow and produce. I need to be able to have the stuff ready when she says, okay, time to mulch the blueberries. I got to be able to get the wagon to the mulch, load the wagon, get the wagon into the blueberries, and shovel the mulch onto the blueberries. So, you know, keeping things in good order, keeping fences fixed, those are kind of the more important things. Keeping the water system up and running, that's kind of what I do.
In what ways does your work benefit others?
We hope that it benefits others, that they like the things that we grow. You know, that's one of the good things about the farm stand is that we get a chance to meet people when they come, and if they would want something that we don't have and we might want to grow it for them, we might grow that next year or whatever. Or if they come and they say, your corn is the best corn we've ever had, will you have more tomorrow? Then we hopefully will benefit them because they get that corn that they like, and it's good for us because of course they're coming and buying the corn from us too.
Yeah.
So hopefully the benefit flows both directions.
Yeah. What are some of the parts of farm work you really like?
Well, interacting with the public, I like that very much. I like getting fresh manure and turning it into composted manure. There's something very satisfying about that. It sounds a little bit gross, but hey, somebody's got to do it, right? I like that part. Don't ask me, is your next question going to be what don't I like? Did you have that one on there?
Well, my next question is, like, are there any things you don't like but you have to do?
Right, okay. I was worried if that one was coming or not. Yeah, I mean, there's always things, you know, a big wind comes up and knocks down a whole bunch of sugar tubing or blows away one of the hoop houses or something like that. Then you got to go and fix it. Kind of doing things catch up. That's always frustrating. Well, you know, for an example, we now have a new used cooler here that is better than our old used cooler, except that it doesn't get cold. So now I got to figure out what to do with that. So that's not exactly fun, but it's got to be done anyway. So.
Yeah. Are there parts? On what parts of your farm do you spend most of your time?
Well, sugaring is probably the thing that I put the most time in on, and then probably the fields would be next. Getting the fields ready and getting them prepped and weeding in the fields, probably next most use of my time.
What are some of the ways your farm work has changed over the time you've been at it?
We are a little more mechanized than we used to be, so we use the tractors more now to till the fields, to spread the manure in the rows, and to and get the rows ready to plant. We have more tractors than we used to, and we use them more than we used to, so that's a big change.
In your opinion, what are some of the difficulties that you and farms of your size face today?
It's always going to be a question of, are there enough people there to buy your produce? And, you know, we have wonderful, young, very committed people moving to this area, buying farms or renting farms, trying to grow food and trying to make a living from it. And there may not be enough purchasing public out there for everyone. And we hope there is. Ideally, there would be. But will everyone who's starting a CSA be able to make a living, and will we continue to be able to make a living here? I hope so, but I have a feeling that that could be a limiting factor coming up soon.
What do you see as the future of your farm in Marlboro?
We would like to say that we will be here as long as we have the energy to do it. And I think that if other younger people come along who want to use these fields, grow our berries, manage them and sell them, that's going to be fine with us. That was the point. The point is not just for us to benefit from this work, but for it to be a long-term advantage for whoever is living here. If they want to maintain things, they should be able to sell the crops that they get from them.
Okay. What people or experiences would you say have influenced you in your personal life?
Boy, that's hard. That's tough. I don't know, there's so many people running through my mind that from whom we've learned things about all kinds of different things. I don't know, I hate to start down that trail because I'm sure I'll leave somebody important out. So I'm gonna give a pass on that one. Sorry, Roxanne.
Is there anything else about your life or work that you'd like to mention but that I haven't asked you about?
You know, I guess I would say that, actually jump back to the one before that, my entire family. You know, we all live, as we said in the earlier interview, we live up and down this road. You just saw a couple of my grandkids go walking by here. You know, I guess I think that whether it's those particular people, my children and grandchildren, or somebody else's children and grandchildren that end up using this space, I guess I think I would like, as I said before, I would like to see this piece of property be useful for whoever wants to use it to grow whatever they want to grow into the future. And so, and that, you know, the building business, the music business are somewhat less important to me, I guess, than I think is making this piece of property a productive piece of property. And I use my grandchildren as an example of someone who might want to stay here and work on it, but it wouldn't have to be them, and we don't particularly care. If somebody can use it and wants to, that would be important for us.
That's the end of the interview, and thank you very much for
Well, thank you for being good interviewers. Thank you.
Alright, and that is a